The True Path Entrepreneur Group Business Coaching Mastermind Program is open for enrollment now. Click the link that you see here to learn more all about it. And if you feel called, book a one-on-one exploratory call with me to learn how you can start and grow your transformational coaching, healing, psychedelic therapy, or spiritual business in 2025. The world needs you and your unique medicine. Don't wait another year to start getting clients and making a difference in the lives of others. The world needs you now. Fill out the application, and I look forward to speaking to you. Hello there, welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I am so honored to have my friend Tanya Lynn with us here today, coming from Costa Rica, my favorite place on the planet, one of them. Hi, Tanya. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So good to connect with you again. I have to say, when was it, like 2 or 3 years ago when I was in Costa Rica? I think somehow you saw that I was in Costa Rica and you invited me to go to this amazing, amazing gathering. And it was just so nice to have that experience of knowing someone from the internet and then meeting in person and just being like, hey, we're like old friends. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
so
and
nice.
that was such a great party too.
So fun. I've actually told so many people, I'm like, I want to go back for one of their other parties. It was just so fun. But that experience really represents so much of your work and
Mm,
like what we're standing for as transformational leaders in this space. And I'm so excited to talk to you. But it's very interesting how there's so many connections I've made over the years in the coaching and medicine and transformational industry, and how even though we've known people from the internet, we can just be like BFFs instantly. And I can't wait to go into your work because I know this is what you're doing, is bringing together women to
yeah.
create these connections and like be able to do this. I mean, imagine a planet where we could do this with each other, right?
Yes. That is exactly what we're all about. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
So let
excited to
me tell
dive in.
people. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll tell people about you, and then we'll get right into it about your work. So Tanya is the visionary founder of Sistership Circle, a global organization that has trained tens of thousands of women how to fill, lead, and grow their women's circles. With her truth-telling style of leadership, she has a gift of seeing the brilliance in women and activating them to step into their power. She has successfully integrated the masculine and feminine within herself, making her both fierce and soft, strategic and able to surrender, mission driven yet highly relatable with her vulnerability. Tanya is the best selling author of multiple books, including Open Your Heart, How to Be a New Generation Feminine Leader, The Art of Leading Circle, and the Women's Circle Ritual Handbook. And you can check out her links right here in the show notes. But Tanya, you said it right here in your bio, this way of leadership where it's integrated masculine feminine, where we can carry both and hold both, and I can completely relate to that as a double fire sign myself. But the one thing I would love to hear about is your story. What got you into facilitating these women's circles, doing trainings, writing books? And I would love to know, what was your former career? Did you ever have a corporate job like a lot of us did?
Yeah, actually, I did. Um, I grew up actually as a community builder, and now that my kids are getting a little bit older, there's this thing called the 9-year change that I learned. My kids went to Waldorf last year, and this 9-year change, they say, is like a really pivotal year. It's like your destiny year, and whatever's happening at 9 years old can impact like what your purpose is. And that was the year that my parents built and moved into what became known as the community house. We had 2 acres out in Poway, which is east of San Diego. And we had this yard that essentially would host like 50 people for every holiday. And so I grew up at a very young age, understanding and living in like a very vibrant community. And so when I moved back to my hometown of San Diego from New York City, and that's where I was working in corporate sales at Thomson Financial, which is now Thomson Reuters. I was selling market data at to the hedge funds, and had a really great time living the New York life in my late 20s, and went on the New York Stock Exchange and had we had a box at Madison Square Garden, and I got to take clients there, and I really got to have this amazing experience there. But then I was like, okay, I really don't want to end up in New York. I don't want to raise a family here. Like, I need to get back to the West Coast. And so when I was trying to figure out what am I going to do, I was like, oh, I should do some kind of networking events because I had gone to one in New York that I really liked. And so I put on my first event in 2000, and I think it was 2009. And I had like 30 women show up, and I really didn't know many people as an adult going back to San Diego, but I knew I was onto something. And so that just kind of evolved and morphed into what is now Sistership Circle, where we had events happening every month. We started creating programs, and then I fell into the women's circle. And at the time, I didn't even know what a women's circle was. All I knew was I was bringing women together on a weekly basis. And then when I met my husband, he said, "Oh, this is the McDonald's of women's circles." And I was like, "All right, like I don't know about McDonald's because I don't really, eat that type of food. I like healthy food, but yes, he saw what I was doing, and he saw how much the women were impacted when they would come into these containers, into these circles and events." And so he really helped me. And together, actually, we came together in 2014 to build what is now Sistership Circle, and create this global platform, and create our training sequence of ways that women can progress on the journey. And yeah, so that's kind of, and now we're here in Costa Rica building a retreat center and goddess temple, which is a whole other story. But it is about actually bringing people together in person, which comes back to, what you were saying at the beginning of that power of we know each other online, we're finding our tribe online, and what happens when we come together. And so while I love the internet and Zoom and being able to connect with people all over the world, there's nothing like when we come together in person. And so how do we have both? And so that's kind of the trajectory of where we're going. Yeah.
I love it. I love this story because I was totally New York City corporate, used to go to some networking events, and I get it. That's just so amazing that it evolved out of that, just connecting together, getting to know people. And, as a business coach, I'm constantly telling my clients, just go connect. Yeah, there's marketing, there's all this, strategy. And I'm like, just meet people on a human level. And it seems so interesting to have to tell people that in this day and age, but it's been really fascinating to see how things have changed since 2020. Obviously, like me and you I was already online. So for me, it wasn't a huge change, but just the world that's gone so online, like even having Zoom calls with friends that live like 40 minutes from me is like always a little weird, It's like, we could just meet up. But tell me, like, what is the intention behind the women's circles? Because I'm probably like you. I remember going to my first women's circles, like maybe, 11, 12 years ago, maybe. And I was like, are these just going to be a bunch of fluff? Is this like, and even now, like I'm part of so many women's groups, and I tend to be skeptical. I tend to think like, oh, is this just like going through the motions? Like, do people really connect? But what is the whole point of this anyways, in the first place? Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I got since I've been in Costa Rica, I went back last year to San Diego and I started getting our monthly gatherings together. And I'm so excited because they're continuing without me because I really just got the community going and they're running with it and just using our structure. And a common thing is like, are we going to be just doing chanting? And there's this like it's very feminine and it's going to be like woo woo fluff and it's like no. And that's why for me it's really about this masculine and feminine piece and having a really strong container and structure, and that's really what we're teaching at Sistership Circle is how do you hold that, and so it doesn't like go off into this whole fluffy thing. But for us at Sistership, we are all about a transformational journey and that we hold this container and we have this journey that you go on, that's like a transformational arc. And so we are typically using a really powerful question for everyone to share on. But it's not just like what's going on today, it's having something, a question that's having women dig a little deeper. And so the design is that you're going to kind of go down a little bit into the gunk. And then the rest of the circle is actually going to take you back up through movement, through ritual, through ceremony, that we could come out and feel like, wow, I didn't feel like coming tonight. I had this resistance, but thank God I came because not only am I feeling connected to all these women who just shared really vulnerably and authentically and are revealing stuff, but we got to go through this really cool transformational process together, as a group. And so the women just, they just want to keep coming back and they want to tell their friends. And I mean, we consistently in the San Diego group, we have like 30 women showing up every week. Or not every week, sorry, every month. Yeah. So we'll do those monthly. And so we're teaching that you have these monthly gatherings and then you create some kind of longer term container that's meeting weekly for, 3 months. And also that has this transformational arc throughout the whole program. And so, it's like we're not just doing the regular, oh, let's just burn some papers for the full moon. Although we might do that, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's like actually let's get under and let's see what's really going on. And so that's what women have always said since 2010 is, wow, it's just authentic. Like what we're doing at Sistership Circle is authentic.
Oh my God. I will name that. I love that you named exactly what I go through every time I go to anything like this, like a sharing circle or a women's group or a moon circle. I don't really want to go. I'm not feeling it. Like sometimes I roll my eyes and then I go and I come out of it like, oh, thank God I went, Yeah. And I think so many people probably go through that, because there is always that fear of once in a while I do go to some where it's like, oh God, like I'm known in my community for making the jokes like, oh, not another ceremony. Because I do so many and that's part of my whole life. Like my whole life is a constant ritual. And so sometimes when it's like kind of like a fake ritual, it's like, oh, okay, but then if it's authentic, if it's deep sharing, if it's really being held in the right way, it can be super like cathartic and transformational. Yeah. And I'm wondering, because we're seeing more and more of these women's groups, moon circles now, even in the community I live in, like now men's groups. Yeah. Why is this necessary? Like, why now? And why is this a thing? And what about, like the people do make fun of, my ex in particular used to make jokes about like, oh, you guys getting together and drinking hot chocolate, meaning cacao. Yeah. And I'd be like, oh my God. Maybe. I have to give him credit. I love it. For that one.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, but like, why now? Why is this, why does it even matter?
Yeah. It's such a great question. And I love it. And it's fun to just make fun of, the spiritual things that we do. And, we got to make light of it. It's, it's just one big, huge cosmic joke, right? Exactly. We're just hurling through space, having a party here on Earth. Um, yeah, so I think that we hear a lot about the divine feminine rising. And it's like, well, what does that really mean? And, there's this imbalance on the planet of masculine, toxic masculine energy that has suppressed the feminine for, thousands of years. And it's only really in the 1900s that women even got the right to vote. So it's like it hasn't been that long since women weren't even allowed to vote. They couldn't own property. They were the property of men. And so we could see this. We see in the 70s, 80s, there were women starting to gather. And so now it's like this next generation, it's like, well, we're not about men bashing. I think that's a really important distinction,
Yes.
right? It's not about that men are bad. And we found that, and we could see this with men's circles happening. We used to do this beautiful event called Honoring the Masculine, where the women would hold a circle and put the men in the middle, and the men would share. And the women are all just crying because the men actually had this beautiful space, the safe space to be vulnerable and share the confusion that they have of being a man today. And I'm getting goosebumps because it's every time we did it, we just have women hearts cracked open of like, wow, it's not actually the men that are the problem. It's the patriarchy, which is the system that then we have taken on within ourselves, right? It's the limited beliefs within ourselves. So for me, a women's circle, we don't do feedback. We do what's called the beam, where it's witnessing. And when women, for the first time in their lives, get to come in a place that's safe, that has agreements, where they can share authentically what's there for them, they begin to find their truth, speak their truth, trust their truth, right? And they gain a confidence. And they also see that these women can be my allies, because we as women have been pitted against each other. I believe that's one of the patriarchy's ways of keeping women suppressed is, let's separate the women. Let's pit them against each other. Let's make them jealous and betray one another, and, all the competition and comparison. So when women come together and realize, oh, these are my sisters, what does that mean? What does it mean to have real, authentic sisterhood where women aren't backstabbing me, where we can actually have real conversations with one another? That to me is the divine feminine rising. It's not just about a bunch of individual women. It's about the collective women realizing, number one, how powerful we are because we've got yonis. We give birth, or we can if we choose. So we are powerful. And then you put us together. Oh, wait, we are so powerful together. And that is that balancing out of the energies on the planet. Because it's energy. It's feminine energy, masculine energy, and men can have feminine energy. And the more that women are getting in touch with that, men are as well, right? And then it's like we can also cultivate our divine masculine within ourselves as women. And so we get to to me, it's the way we're going to change the world.
Woo! I have to say, that was so well put. I'm like, yes, yes. It was funny. I was with some friends this weekend, and they were all like, we were my friends making wine, and they were all like, yeah, like smash their patriarchy. And I'm sitting there going like, like I get really triggered hearing that, because I'm like, oh, I hope they mean like the system that we all know is broken and not just men. Like I've personally have a hard time even hearing that, because I know there's so many different narratives around the patriarchy, and of course, I know, like everybody, I think we all have an awareness, like the whole entire system's completely broken. Something needs to change. Like exactly what you said. There's a imbalance, which by the way, came up a lot those last few weeks with like watching the world and the weather and the wars and, hurricanes and floods. And it's like, it's a deep imbalance on so many levels that I really believe energetically, it does affect the earth. It does affect the weather. I mean, I don't know. That's my theory. everyone probably thinks I'm crazy saying this, but I think on such a deep level, it's the imbalance of we're not connected to the earth. We're not connected to our voice and our sovereign, our hearts. And then, like you said, there's the pitted against each other. I can't even tell you. I went my whole life, like I always had girlfriends, but it was always like that feeling of like fear. Like I had this deep fear around women until until I started going to some of these women's circles, like whatever it was, like 13 years ago or so, where I was like, and women's retreats and women's goddess things. And I started helping out and I was like, wait a second, 200 of us can get together and not know each other and actually get along for 3 days, like on a whole retreat weekend. And not only that, people would be crying and hugging each other and we'd have like instant friends. And I'm still friends with a lot of these people today. But I never understood why it was always so mean girl, like the mean girl thing. Even sometimes to this day, I still get a lot of that, out there in the internet, but I just, like send them compassion and prayers and, have boundaries. But like you said, it's like, I feel like we have been pitted against each other. And then men, it's been very interesting to navigate the last few years with, there's a lot of the narrative around men, like the toxic masculine. It's like, okay, we all know there is a toxic masculine, but how do we define what that is versus like the everyday guy, because what I started seeing is a lot of men just like kind of pulling back and like scared to be themselves out there. What have you witnessed when it comes to like the men and women and the relationships out there since, this has all been changing?
I've been talking about this a lot lately because I have a lot of friends who are divorcing. And where I'm at is mid 40s. And I would say a lot of these women and these couples are in their 40s. And I think what's going on is a lot of these men are in their mid 40s. They're in that transition, or what's the tunnel from Prince to King, Alison Armstrong's work. Highly recommend. That has been a game changer of understanding what Brent is going through. As he is literally, it's the midlife crisis. It's the, who am I? What's my purpose? What the heck am I doing? And he's taken on this building project, right? De la Diosa, of building a house, building this retreat center that has challenged him. And so there's almost this like proving himself and asserting himself. And there's a little bit of a power struggle between us. And a lot of women are saying, oh, my husband is so narcissistic. It's just not working. And a lot of times what it is that he is working his butt off and probably working too much and not giving her enough attention. And it's like, well, is it really narcissism? Or maybe some of them, I don't know. I'm not in their marriage, right? But it's like, or is it that these men are trying to figure out who they are and what they're doing? And so it is a little bit me-centered. And they're in this world that's really confusing right now. So I have to come from a place of, I have to keep reminding myself that my husband is a really good guy. He's put his service, like his whole life has been dedicated to the feminine. Like building Sistership Circle, building a goddess temple. And it's really hard for him to balance doing work and family. Is that narcissistic? No. Do I sometimes feel a little neglected and abandoned by him? Yes. But I have to keep remembering, and I think that's what it is. If we as women can have a little bit more compassion for the men, we can see that underneath there's this little boy who's just trying to assert his manhood. And they kind of need us to be compassionate and a little supportive of that, and I don't know if all my friends will agree with me, but and that's really just coming from my own marriage and the struggle that we've been in the last couple of years. Of finding our way, like finding how do we balance it all. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought this up. It's interesting. I interviewed an elder about like 9 months ago, something like that. And he had said something, I basically asked what's wrong in our society, and he's like, well, think about it. Like, we are juggling making money, going to work, raising families, going to school, commuting, whether you're in Costa Rica or the US, it's like there's
Yeah.
some travel. Then, yeah, like managing a home, paying it's like, and then most of us are doing this alone, like
Alone.
in a family unit. And maybe we have some friends, but it's not the same as it used to be. And there's not, there's not really this like deep sense of community. And then when you don't have the circles, or you don't have the support, or you don't have, community of friends to go to, then it just gets so hard and people just lash out and flip out. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm also glad you brought up narcissism, because it's I've argued with this as well, is yes, there are some narcissistic people out there, and it's being thrown around because, Instagram or whatever. And it's like, there's also ranges. And I think to just lump people into like, oh, he's a narcissist because he's going through a transformation, or he's finding himself, or he's busy trying to, whatever it is, make ends meet. It's like we have to really bring some compassion into this whole process, especially, by the way, the whole entire like rise of the divine feminine, the crumbling of the patriarchy. It's like we have to bring some compassion to this, because we are witnessing changes from, thousands of years of programming. And now we're all trying to like figure it out and navigate it. And I think a lot of people who are conscious and aware of this are trying to like, okay, well, now what? How do we go about like being in relationship, and how do we get along? And, there's going to be hiccups, and we have to have compassion. And so I'm really glad you brought this up, because I think this is like a huge, as I say, the medicine for our times is we can't just expect like all the men to change overnight and become these like great, kings and like, why aren't you acting this way? And
It's up
this
to
is why I
us.
get, yeah,
It's up
yeah,
to the women, really. I mean, that's what I have to keep coming back to, is that, and he says this to me not to like off put any responsibility, but he's like, you are the heartbeat of the family. You are the harmony. So, like the women, we are the ones who, when we could take responsibility for that, and we can make huge change, but the men are following us. And sometimes it's like, that's hard to swallow, because it's like, it feels like a burden, and it feels like, well, I just want him to do the work, but we're really the ones doing the work. It's like,
oh yeah,
and I just want to say this thing about Instagram, TikTok, it's a hall of mirrors, right? The algorithm is giving you all the evidence to prove your story right.
mm-hmm.
And so we will find the perfect video to support that belief that our husband is a narcissist.
You're so right.
And like, we have to realize this. It's a crazy hall of mirrors. So yeah, I had to say that, because
And
some
it's
people just
bite-sized.
don't see it.
No, totally. And I'm like, you guys are learning, you're trying to learn like years and years and years of study on like one little bite-sized caption too. And I'm like, oh God, and I think that's where there's just so many of these narratives and buzzwords going around. And I'm like, okay, in what context are you talking about smashing the patriarchy? And even the word smashing, I'm like, I had a full-on vision about this a few months ago, actually, during it was like in the spring, and now I forget, but it was a major astrological transit, and now I forget which one. And I had a full download. I was like, oh, we need to grieve the past. We need to grieve the crumbling, systems and the crumbling patriarchy. And, this balance of the masculine and feminine, and the rising of the feminine. The vision was all about this. It was like, we can't just go and expect there to be like instant change. We actually need to honor, like, it's kind of like putting the garbage, the scraps in the compost, and like turning the compost, and like making sure the compost gets water and sunlight. It's kind of the same thing. We can't just like throw it in this bin and hope that it comes out as like, a new tomato plant in like a week. It's like there's a process. And I think we have to acknowledge this and also like bring more of that awareness and compassion, like you said. And I love that you just mentioned it's up to us. As a woman who's probably a lot like me, it's like fiery yet soft, and like I have the masculine, and I've been working on this, just on a personal level. This has been my biggest journey, is to bring in my balance of the feminine, like bring in more of the feminine, because I was totally like overly masculine when it came to how I run my life. And so it's been a deep journey to like trust in my own masculine and trust in my own feminine. And it's still constant journey. But yeah, let's talk about that a little bit more, because you mentioned, being a leader and having both. And it's funny in our coaching industry, like this kind of transformational industry, we see a lot of like super feminine polarized women that are like, just, someone I follow even made a joke about it today, like women who talk about making 7 figures with their yoni. And then, like there's a lot of that. And then there's then there's the super masculine women too. And then there's the men, where it's like the super masculine men, like, the bro marketer guys and the, so yeah. How do we bring it into a balance within ourselves? Like what is the process with that? And what do you think this will lead to?
Well, I'm way over on the masculine side, grew up playing sports and, living in New York City doing sales. And just, so I started with landmark education, which is super masculine in the head. And over time have been cultivating my feminine energy, learning. At one point, I had to swing way over into the feminine and let go of everything. And just, it was this deep dive surrender and just floating around, with no plan, no structure, following one day at a time. And it was a very powerful process, but then I had to bring back all the masculine structures in. So it's the masculine structure to contain and hold the feminine flow. And it's like, we think about, a cup, I have my smoothie here, as the masculine structure. And then the liquid inside, it can, if it has a bunch of holes in the container, then it just dissipates, right? So we can keep that energy kind of moving within the containment. So that's kind of how I always think about my business, living my life, is creating structures and containers to then support my feminine. So what are all the ways that I'm taking care of myself? And I'm building that into the structure. I'm building in the self-care. I'm building in, the things that make me feel good. I'm building in my rest time, and so that I can still do the things that I need to do, because I believe that a lot of the business pieces are masculine: taking action, having focus, having a purpose. The structure that in and of itself is masculine. So that for me has been big. It's also been, I feel really fortunate that I found a man who got to really hold a lot of the masculine pieces of my business when we were first starting, built the platform, built the container. He's left to go work on the other project, but I've been able to fill in those pieces. But that really helped me to just be a little bit more in my feminine in the business. But not every woman's going to have a man who's going to come in and do that, right? So we have to kind of do that within ourselves. But for me, it's just been about systems and structures that are sustainable and that work. And then can I make sure that I'm taking care of myself so that I am in the magnetic, juicy, feminine energy.
Yeah, it's so important. And it's, I see this a lot with myself, with my clients too. Like you said, it's like there's so much masculine to do, especially in those first couple years, like getting a lot of the structures and systems in place, and then you can relax a little bit more. Of course, there's always, it seems like there's always something that comes up.
Hmm.
But to really build it in, like build in time off, build in, I personally don't like working on Fridays, and I occasionally do, but I generally take them off. So I built it in. It's like, well, that's just my day of like, I don't do work. And if I do, it's like not like no one else's work. It's my work, like I'm no calls, no nothing. But I think it's hard for a lot of people to get this into balance, especially with it's a very masculine driven, like entrepreneurship in general. It's like, okay, there's a lot to do. And there's like the marketing even is like, I'm starting to question like, how do we do marketing that's really balanced, that feels really good and not too much and not too little, because there's a reality to it. But, and I see clients struggle with this a lot where it's like, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
or I wish I could just like meditate my way into clients. I mean, don't we all? I'm just curious, like, do the kind of women that join your groups and join your circles and go to your trainings, are they entrepreneurs? Are they like women looking for an outlet because they're kind of stuck in careers that they don't like and they have no community? Like, what is the kind of archetype? And also, I'm just curious, because you're really like on the front lines, like what is the feel out there? Like, what is everybody feeling that's driving them to go join these women's groups?
We have such a mix. I mean, we have coaches, therapists who are wanting to go from one to group. We have stay-at-home moms. We've got women wanting to exit a corporate career and find something more meaningful. So we've got women all over the map in terms of like entrepreneurial business experience. I would say the majority do not have business experience, aren't so much entrepreneurial, and are really wanting to find something that's more in the feminine. And then we have some who are building, and that is the struggle, is like, how do I not burn out? That's the number one question. How do I do this without burning out and working and having everything become about work? How do I find that work-life balance? Yeah, and I think a lot of women, we have like half who want to create a business with the women's circles, and then others who are just really wanting to do it just kind of for themselves, and build that community and sisterhood that they can have, that's just kind of for fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing. You
Mm.
mentioned like therapists wanting to start groups, and that's something I've seen over the years too, where it's like, yeah, individual therapy is so potent, but there's nothing as powerful as relational healing, like healing in circles, healing in community, knowing that there's people like, oh, okay, you share the same thing, and I just heard about this, and now, oh, I'm learning from you.
Yeah.
So that's really powerful as well. So let's talk about, what do you see coming down the line in like the world and the future and the rising of the divine feminine over the next, I hate to even think super long term, because it's like the whole world
Mm.
seems like it's in such change. Who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, do you ever have any visions of where this is all going to go in the future and how women are going to play a part and what this work might expand into? I mean, especially, your work, but even just the amount of women that are holding similar type containers. And, like now there's more and more people talking about the balance of the masculine and the feminine and doing this, work around polarity. Yeah, where do you think it's all going? Do you think this is going to have a greater impact in the world on some level?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of chuckling because the thing I hear the most from women, that's like the perfect ideal, is creating these women communes. Every time, like I'm at a retreat, or it comes up so often. why don't we just all come live on your property, Tanya? And we could just like either put the men in the corner or just tell them to leave and we'll bring them when we need them. But there's this interesting, kind of funny, but like everyone, it's the ideal or the wish, the hope that I don't know if it would ever come true, but women just wanting to live with each other because it's just so much easier if women are living together raising kids.
Mm.
And so there's just this desire and longing that's in the collective around that. So I just want to give voice to it. It's kind of silly, it's kind of funny, because it's like, well, what would I do with my husband? Because we're building a retreat center, we're not building an actual physical like living community here. But who knows, and the world is crazy. And we have a lot of nuclear warheads and there is war happening and it's getting intense. So, kind of our backup plan is that maybe people will just be coming down to Costa Rica because we're kind of away from all that. And there's been, lots of people saying that. And it's a reality that we do need to acknowledge that it's a possibility, right? But I think if the more that women are waking up and the more that women are gathering, I think it can make a difference. And who knows if it's going to be in our lifetime. But I'm even looking at my girls and I'm like, wow, they have such a different connection. They have a different way of looking at things. And so every generation, I think, gets a little bit more evolved. And that's the thing I'm seeing the most is like, wow, look at my difference between my girls and my parents even, or even just some of what they are getting that I didn't know at 7 and 9 years old. So, yeah, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I know that women are definitely rising up, and we see that. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to find out. I mean, because I've had my theories, and I feel like sometimes I live in a bubble because I'm like, I see the effects. I see my community changing. I see people I
Yeah.
know shifting, and then the men around shifting along with it. But then I remind myself, I'm like, well, I also live in a bubble, I think. So, like, I mean, maybe you as well. It's like I live in kind of somewhat conscious community. Most of my friends are on similar paths.
Hmm.
We've created a whole community where I live where it's like there's an interconnected conscious community. So then it does seem like, oh, wow, this is so nice that there's so many of these circles and people coming together and having like deep discussions. But then I don't know, the rest of the world, I have no idea. Like you said, the algorithms are telling you what you want to, where you want to go and reinforcing what you already believe. So it's like, who knows where there's going to be a split or where there's going to be like a large scale global transformation. But I will
Well,
say
I
yeah.
I think so. I mean, yes, and I live in a bubble too. I think, I live with mainly people who are just like me, and but then you see Marianne Williamson running for president, getting like national, global coverage, like regular press. I mean, yes, I mean, we could, yes, we all know about the press, but, and then we even have Robert Kennedy running as an independent. Now, lots of people don't agree with him, but he is spiritual. He is getting a lot of coverage, right? So I think that there's going to be these people who are kind of popping with these more spiritual lenses going out into the public. It's like Jennifer Aniston talking about goddess circles on the media. So the more that it can get into the mainstream, I'm just thinking about even the shows that are available on Netflix, the documentaries, and so much with the plant medicine. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how much has that conversation is everywhere now.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's actually a big part of it is the more that we are creating these relationships with the plants,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really what's going to um, make the biggest impact. I really believe. I think the more that medicines are coming into the mainstream, just the fact that MDMA was, on trial is huge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that there is hope. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, the great mother, Mother Earth, right? The ultimate
exactly.
goddess, divine feminine that keeps us alive and provides everything we need. I mean, that's why, my prayer is that the more people that are either moving towards the medicine start to, move towards the path of the work you're doing, or people, the work you're doing, go do more earth work. It's like it's all interconnected, and I think
Yeah,
it's just this deep disconnection from, like you said, our yoni, like our innate power that has been so suppressed for so long.
yeah,
And same with the earth. It's like the earth has everything we need, and how many people are completely disconnected from her as this feminine, giving body that's just constantly giving and nourishing us. So yeah, I mean, you said a lot of great gems, and there's so much, I tend to be an optimist. I'm like, yeah, the world's crazy. And I mean, I see both, obviously, but I really do believe like the more work you're doing, the more you're impacting, the more people that are like, at least like just even going to a women's circle, like I think about my first experience being kind of apprehensive and being kind of, wow, this is amazing. Let me go to more of these. The
hmm
more people that, even if you're scared, like can show up to one and realize that we're not alone, that we're all in this together, and we have
hmm
sisters around the world, even if we never meet in real life. I have so many people I've never met in real life, right? That it's like I can consider them friends, like real friends. So I love it. Well, I want to
hmm
give you a chance to share about how can people get involved? What do you, specifically offer, and what's coming down the pipeline for you over the next 6 to 12
yeah.
months? Any new big offerings? I know finishing a retreat center is like no joke, though. Oh my God. No joke. Yeah.
Yeah, well, our plan for 2025 is to have our first big, I want to call it a goddess fest. And so start having retreats, even though we don't have the retreat center built. And that for me feels really important is just starting to cultivate the energy on the land. We could always do glamping tents. So that's our plan for the next year is that we start bringing people onto this land. It's super powerful. I feel like a different person living on the land right now. I live in a tree house. It's gorgeous. Like it's just incredible. I'm 5 minutes from the beach. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's amazing living here. And we have a lot of different books and resources. I think one of our favorites is the Women's Circle Ritual Handbook. And I could give you the links so that someone could go and get 2 free rituals from there. And then if you like them, you could purchase the whole book. But I think that's a great place for people to start. We have one book for every season, and we have 40 rituals in each book. And they're all contributed by amazing facilitators from all over. So I think that's a great way to get to know us and then just, come pop by on Instagram, Instagram.com/Sistership Circle or our Facebook page. And yeah.
So beautiful. And when I'm down in Costa Rica, I'll be visiting you. And
Yes, come.
yeah. And if people are in San Diego, can they join one of these circles, or is that kind of
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could just contact me and a lot of people just, DM me on our Instagram and then I could send you the link for the next gathering.
So
Yeah.
good. So good. Well, Tanya, I could talk to you forever, but I have
I
another
know.
call. It was so good to finally connect. I'm so glad you're doing this work. I was like, I had this when was it? A few months ago, I was like, I need to speak to more women that are doing work with women. It just came through. And so I found some really interesting women, and I knew, I've been watching your work for a long time. I know we have so many common friends, and you're doing such good work in the world. And these are the moments where, when there's like floods and hurricanes and wars and it's all seeming to hit all at once, it's like, okay, like we have to remember that there's people doing the good work out there. There's people with, moving the good energy, like really standing for this kind of new earth that we all really believe in, that we all know is possible. So keep it up, and thank you so much, and many blessings to all the women in your community for showing up and doing this for the planet.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor to be here with you on your show.